The chaos begins. In the vastness of space, Abrium Station floated like a solitary pearl amidst a sea of darkness. Its metallic halls were usually filled with laughter and chatter, but today an ominous silence hung in the air, broken only by distant echoes of chaos. Tath, a young alien girl with vibrant blue skin and large expressive eyes, huddled beneath her parents' bed, heart racing. She had never known fear like this before. The screams that filled the air were not those of joy or celebration. They were cries of terror. Tath's pointed ears flicked nervously as she tried to block out the sounds with her small hands. Her parents had left her alone just moments ago, assuring her that she was old enough to take care of herself. But now, as she lay curled up in a ball, she felt anything but brave. Suddenly, loud cracks echoed through the station, gunshots, or perhaps something worse. She squeezed her eyes shut, wishing for it all to be a nightmare from which she could awaken. But reality was far crueler than any dream. Gathering her courage, she crawled out from under the bed, unsheathing her retractable claws instinctively in response to her rising anxiety. Tath knew she had to find safety. She quickly rummaged through her room, throwing aside books and toys until she found her backpack. With trembling hands, she stuffed it with preserved food from the kitchen fridge, a small supply of meat and water, and grabbed a pair of scissors and a knife before zipping it shut. With one last glance at her home, she steeled herself for whatever lay beyond the door. As she cracked open the door, a wave of foul air washed over her. Blood and death permeated every corner of the hallway. She hesitated but took a deep breath and stepped out into the unknown. The corridor was eerily quiet now. Any sign of life seemed to have vanished. She remembered how much she loved playing hide-and-seek with friends in these very halls. Now they felt like a labyrinth designed for nightmares. Tath began to move cautiously toward the main pavilion of Abrium Station. It was usually bustling with activity. Perhaps there would be someone there who could help her. As she rounded a corner, raised voices reached her ears. Angry shouts mixed with laughter that sent chills down her spine. Curiosity battled against fear as she crept closer to investigate. Peering around a doorway, Tath's heart sank at what she saw. 4 figures dressed in ragged clothing were gathered around something on the floor, something grotesque that made her stomach churn. Her friend's family lay lifelessly on the ground, their bodies desecrated beyond recognition. Horror gripped her heart as she realized these were no ordinary attackers. They were flesh tearers, monsters known for their insatiable hunger for violence. A gasp escaped her lips before she could stop it. Instantly, one of the figures turned towards her, a hulking human with wild eyes that glinted with madness. "Look, the meat has come out to play," he shouted, his voice dripping with malice. Panic surged through Tath as she bolted down the corridor on all fours, propelled by sheer instinct. She could hear them behind her, shouts mixed with footsteps pounding against the metal flooring. Her legs moved faster than she ever thought possible. Adrenaline fueled every muscle in her body. She darted into an adjacent hallway, but quickly realized it was a dead end. Desperation clawed at her throat as she scanned for an escape route. Just ahead was an open door leading into what appeared to be an old library filled with dusty shelves and outdated technology. A sanctuary from chaos, but also a trap if they followed too closely. Tath rushed inside and glanced around frantically for somewhere to hide. Her eyes fell upon a tall shelf that looked sturdy enough to provide some cover if she could move it aside just enough to access a ventilation shaft behind it. With all her strength, she pulled at it until it shuddered under pressure but remained steadfastly in place. "Where is it?" came another voice from outside, a raspy whisper that sent shivers down her spine. The meat must be close. With renewed determination fueled by fear for her life, Tath yanked harder at the shelf until finally it began to shift away from the wall. Dust fell around her like confetti as she exposed a rusty vent cover behind it. She wasted no time pulling at it until it finally gave way with a screeching protest. Just as she squeezed herself into the tight space behind it, Heavy footsteps thundered into the library. She barely had time to catch her breath before scrambling through the narrow vent shaft that would hopefully lead to safety. The darkness enveloped her like an old friend as she wriggled deeper into its confines. The metallic walls echoed every sound. The thud of feet above was relentless as they searched for their prey. "The meat is clever," one voice said mockingly from below. "But we will find it." Tath pushed onward through the cramped space. Every inch felt like an eternity as panic threatened to overwhelm her senses again. Finally, reaching another grate ahead, she pressed against it desperately, but found it solidly locked in place. "Come on," she whispered fiercely to herself as tears threatened to spill over once more. With one last push, fueled by sheer willpower, she struck at it hard enough that metal groaned under pressure before giving way partially with a loud clang that echoed ominously back through the vent system. As she tumbled out into another room, a cafeteria filled with overturned tables and scattered chairs, she felt both relief and dread wash over her simultaneously. The smell of blood lingered heavily in this room too. It seemed there would be no escaping this nightmare easily. She crouched low behind one of the tables, hoping against hope that whatever horrors lurked nearby wouldn't find her here in this momentary refuge. Just then more voices entered, gruff yet less frantic than before, and Tath held her breath as they drew nearer. "Did you see where it went?" one asked casually while rummaging through debris scattered across what used to be a vibrant dining area, filled with laughter and camaraderie. "No," another replied dismissively, "but we'll find it soon enough." Tath's heart raced again. These were not just any attackers. They were relentless predators who thrived on fear and chaos. As shadows danced across walls illuminated by flickering lights overhead, Tath knew one thing for certain. Survival would require more than just luck. It would demand courage beyond anything she had ever known before. The encounter. As Tath crouched behind the table, her heart raced. The flesh terrors were close, their voices echoing in the cafeteria like a haunting melody of madness. She could hear them discussing her, their words laced with a twisted eagerness that made her skin crawl. The tension builds. Where did it go? One of them growled, his voice deep and gravelly. "I can smell the fear. It's close." Tath pressed her back against the cold metal of the table, trying to make herself as small as possible. She could feel the vibrations of their footsteps against the floor, each thud resonating in her chest like a drumbeat of impending doom. The thought of being caught sent a shiver down her spine. "Let's split up," another voice suggested, sharp and impatient. "We'll find it faster that way." A moment of silence. As they moved away from her hiding spot, Tath took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. She needed to think quickly. If she stayed here, they would eventually find her. But where could she go? The cafeteria was large and open, with few places to hide. Suddenly, she remembered Jessica, the human security officer who always treated her kindly. If anyone could help her, it was Jessica. But where was she? Tath had seen her patrolling earlier. Perhaps she was still nearby. The decision to move. With determination surging through her veins, Tath decided to leave her hiding spot. She carefully peeked around the edge of the table and scanned the room for any sign of Jessica or an exit. The cafeteria was mostly empty now, save for a few scattered chairs and tables that had been overturned in the chaos. Just then, she heard footsteps approaching again, this time heavier and more deliberate. Panic surged within her as she realized she had to act fast. She darted toward a set of double doors at the far end of the room, hoping they would lead to safety. A narrow escape. As she reached the doors, she pushed them open with all her strength and slipped through just as the flesh terrors entered the cafeteria again. Tath didn't dare look back. She sprinted down another corridor, her feet barely touching the ground as adrenaline propelled her forward. The hallway was dimly lit, and every shadow seemed to loom larger than life. She could hear voices behind her, angry shouts and laughter that sent chills down her spine. "The meat is getting away," one shouted. Tath's mind raced as she turned a corner and spotted an old maintenance room on her left. Without thinking twice, she ducked inside and closed the door behind her with a soft click. Inside the maintenance room, the room was cramped and filled with dusty equipment. Old tools and broken machinery littered the floor. It smelled musty, but it was better than being out in the open where those monsters could find her. Tath pressed herself against the wall, trying to steady her breathing. She listened intently for any signs of pursuit, but heard only muffled voices from outside. "Where did it go?" one of them asked again, frustration evident in his tone. "It couldn't have gone far," another replied. "We'll find it." A glimmer of hope. As Tath crouched in fear, she felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. Jessica would come looking for her. The thought kept her grounded as panic threatened to overwhelm her senses again. Suddenly, there was a loud crash outside, followed by shouts that echoed through the corridors. It sounded like there was a struggle happening nearby, a fight between Jessica and the flesh terrors. Tath's heart raced at the thought. She couldn't just sit here while someone brave enough to protect others fought for their lives. A call for help. Gathering every ounce of courage within her, Tath decided she couldn't wait any longer. She had to find Jessica and help however she could, even if it meant putting herself at risk again. Pushing open the door slowly, Tath stepped back into the hallway just as another loud noise erupted from further down. A gunshot. Her heart sank at the sound. It was too close for comfort. "Jessica." Tath called out softly, but urgently, hoping against hope that someone would hear her. Finding Jessica, she crept cautiously down the corridor toward where she thought Jessica might be. As she approached a corner, she spotted movement ahead. A figure clad in dark armor stood facing off against two flesh terrors. It was Jessica. Relief washed over Tath like a wave as she watched Jessica expertly maneuvering around one of the attackers while keeping an eye on the other. "Get away from me," Jessica shouted fiercely as she dodged a wild swing from one of them. Tath felt a surge of admiration for Jessica's bravery. This human woman was fighting against impossible odds to protect not just herself, but everyone on this station, including Tath. Joining forces. Without thinking twice, Tath rushed forward into view. "Jessica," she shouted louder this time, hoping to distract them long enough for Jessica to gain an advantage. Jessica turned at hearing Tath's voice just as one of the flesh terrors lunged at her again. "Tath, get back," she yelled urgently. But it was too late. Tath had already made up her mind. Drawing upon what little training she had received from watching others defend themselves in self-defense classes on Abrium Station, Tath unsheathed her claws and prepared to fight alongside Jessica. The fight intensifies. With a fierce growl that surprised even herself, Tath leaped at one of the attackers just as he swung his weapon toward Jessica. Her claws found their mark on his arm. Sharp pain erupted through him as he stumbled back in shock. "Good job," Jessica exclaimed with a grin despite their dire situation, as she took advantage of Tath's distraction to land a solid kick to another attacker's midsection. Together they fought fiercely against overwhelming odds, Tath darting around with agility, while Jessica used calculated strikes honed by years of training. A bond forms. In that moment of chaos and danger, something shifted between them. A bond forged in fire and fear that transcended species boundaries. They were no longer just an alien girl and a human officer. They were allies united against a common enemy. As they fought side by side, Tath felt empowered by Jessica's presence beside her, a feeling that ignited hope within even amid despairing circumstances. But just when it seemed they might gain control over their attackers, the pursuit. The adrenaline coursed through Tath's veins as she fought alongside Jessica, the human security officer. The chaos of the cafeteria faded into the background, replaced by a singular focus on survival. But just as they began to gain the upper hand against the flesh terrors, a loud crash echoed through the room, sending a shiver down Tath's spine. The unexpected arrival. From the shadows of the cafeteria, a massive figure emerged, one of the flesh terrors, larger and more menacing than the others. His eyes glinted with malice as he surveyed the scene, taking in Jessica and Taff standing defiantly together. "You think you can save the meat?" he roared, his voice a low growl that reverberated off the walls. Jessica's expression hardened. "We won't let you take her," she shouted back, positioning herself protectively in front of Taff. The bond they had formed in such a short time gave Taff strength. She felt emboldened by Jessica's bravery. The fight intensifies. With a primal roar, the new flesh-tearer lunged at them, swinging a crude weapon that looked like it was made from scavenged metal. Jessica dodged to the side just in time, her training kicking in as she countered with a swift kick to his knee. The creature stumbled but quickly regained its balance, turning its attention back to Jessica with a snarl. Taff felt her heart race as she watched Jessica fight. She wanted to help but was unsure how to contribute without putting herself in danger. Then she remembered her own abilities. Her agility and speed could be an asset. "Distract him," Taff called out, her voice steady despite her fear. With that, she darted around to the side, using her small size to her advantage. She moved quickly, weaving between tables and chairs as she approached the monstrous flesh-tearer from behind. A dangerous distraction. Jessica continued to engage the creature head-on, throwing punches and kicks while keeping it occupied. "Come on, Taff. Now's your chance," she yelled, barely avoiding another swing from the flesh-tearer. With determination surging through her, Taff leaped onto a nearby table and then sprang off it toward the creature's back. She extended her claws and aimed for its shoulder. A risky move, but one that could turn the tide of battle. Her claws connected with flesh, and the flesh-tearer howled in pain. It spun around wildly, trying to swat her away like an annoying insect. Taff barely managed to dodge its massive hand as she landed gracefully on her feet. "Good job," Jessica shouted, seizing the moment to land a powerful blow to its midsection. The creature staggered back again, but roared in fury instead of retreating. The chase begins. But before they could celebrate their small victory, more flesh-tearers poured into the cafeteria from another entrance, drawn by the sounds of battle and their fallen comrades' cries. Taff's stomach dropped at the sight of them. There were too many. "We need to get out of here," Jessica urged urgently. "Follow me." Without hesitation, Taff sprinted after Jessica as they bolted toward a side exit leading into another corridor. They could hear shouts behind them, angry voices demanding they be caught. Navigating through danger. As they raced down the narrow hallway, Taff felt both fear and exhilaration coursing through her veins. She had never run so fast in her life. Jessica led them through winding passages that seemed familiar yet disorienting under pressure. "Where are we going?" Taff panted as they turned another corner sharply. "To the control room. We can lock ourselves in there until help arrives," Jessica replied breathlessly. They'd rounded another bend when suddenly they were met with an unexpected obstacle, a group of flesh-tearers blocking their path. Panic surged through Taff as she skidded to a halt beside Jessica. A quick decision. "Think fast," Jessica shouted as she scanned for an escape route. "We can't go back." Taff's mind raced. She spotted an emergency access door on their right that led into an old maintenance area filled with equipment and tools. "Over there," she pointed urgently. Without waiting for confirmation, they dashed toward the door just as the flesh-tearers lunged at them from behind. Jessica slammed into it with all her weight, forcing it open just in time for them to slip inside. A momentary refuge. Inside the maintenance area was dark and cluttered with old machinery and storage crates stacked haphazardly against walls. Taff quickly closed the door behind them and leaned against it, panting heavily while trying to catch her breath. "Are we safe?" she asked nervously. "For now," Jessica replied as she peered through a small window in the door. "But we need to find another way out soon." Taff felt a sense of urgency wash over her. They couldn't stay here forever. "What if we use one of these tools?" she suggested, glancing around at their surroundings filled with rusty equipment and forgotten gadgets. Jessica nodded thoughtfully. That could work, if we can find something useful. Searching for tools. Together they began rummaging through old boxes and crates scattered around them. Taff's small size allowing her to squeeze into tight spaces, while Jessica lifted heavier items aside effortlessly. After several tense moments searching through dusty equipment, Taff found what looked like an old plasma cutter, a tool used for welding metal together, but also capable of cutting through it when needed. "I think this could work," she exclaimed excitedly as she held it up for Jessica to see. "Great find. Let's see if we can use it to create an exit," Jessica said with renewed determination in her eyes. Creating their escape. They quickly set to work on one of the walls near where they had entered. The metal looked weak enough that if they applied enough pressure with the plasma cutter, it might give way. As they worked together under pressure, Jessica steadying the cutter while Taff guided it along. They could hear distant voices growing louder outside their hiding place. Time was running out. Almost there, Jessica muttered through gritted teeth as sparks flew from where their tool met metal. Finally, with one last push forward from both of them, the wall gave way. A hole large enough for them to crawl through opened up before them like a beacon of hope amidst despair. Emerging into danger. "Let's go," Jessica urged as they squeezed through into what appeared to be another corridor leading deeper into Abrium Station's underbelly, a maze-like structure filled with pipes and cables overhead that seemed almost alive with energy coursing through them. As they emerged into this new space, dark yet humming softly around them, Taff felt both fear and excitement bubbling within her once more. This was uncharted territory. "We need to keep moving," Jessica said firmly as they began navigating cautiously down this unfamiliar path together. Two unlikely allies bound by fate amid chaos surrounding them still.